First up, let's tell you about the civil unrest in Iran. The country is facing one of the most serious widespread unrest in years, and the war of words with the United States that is currently intensifying is what we're learning. Protests have raged for about 2 weeks now, initially triggered by economic distress and a currency crisis. But many protests have since turned deadly. They have openly turned against anti-regime with chants against the leadership of Iran's supreme leader. Dissent by women protesters has gone viral on social media as they defy all the restrictions of the regime. We're learning that the right groups and international reports say that crackdown is severe with a rising death toll. Thousands have been detained and a communication restriction has been put on them. And now we're learning that the United States, the president has thrown his weight behind the protesters, saying that US is ready to help the people and the protesters there. For more on this, let me go across to consulting editor Srinjoy Chaudhary. Srinjoy, take us to the latest as far as Iran is concerned. We're learning that different figures have been quoted. There are several right groups who are stating that more than 300 people have died. And now there's one which is quoting that 500 people have lost their life during the civil unrest.
Yes, 500 people is a lot of people. And among them, nearly over 450 are protesters, and there are also several dozen security personnel who have died in the fighting. It's not just the numbers, it's the fact that the protests, the demonstrations, the unrest has spread to different parts of Iran. It began in corners of Western Iran, but it's virtually all over this very large country of about 95 million people. So it's important to see how long this lasts, because this has already gone on for about over a week, 10 days. And importantly, what happens now? How will the government in Iran deal with the situation? Because if it's going out of hand, it could well be something that was similar to what happened in 1978, when Ayatollah Khomeini came in. Those protests were against the Shah. Now, this protest, actually, which has very economic reasons, the fact that inflation is running high and that there are other problems in the country, these protests are largely about inflation. How the government deals with it remains to be seen. But if nearly 500 people have died, then it's a serious problem. And as you rightly said, President Trump has issued a couple of threats in the past, and he's done one more recently. He said, we are watching the situation, and we will do what we will do and when we want to do. Now, what he will do, being as unpredictable as he is, there's been no president of America as unpredictable. So we will have to wait and see what the Americans do. But Iran is not Venezuela. It's not that close to America. Right. Number two, it is a country of 90 million, 95 million people with a very strong armed forces. So we have to see what will happen vis-a-vis America. But let's not forget that America once bombed Iran's nuclear reactors, and that was just some months ago.
Absolutely. And now another fresh warning that is coming from Donald Trump. Stay on with us, Srinjoy. In fact, let's take our viewers to what Donald Trump has said now on the situation in Iran. US President Donald Trump has said, and I quote, it looks like, in fact, some people who were not supposed to be killed have been killed. If you talk about leaders, I do not know if they are leaders for just a rule through the violence, but we and the military are looking at it very seriously. We are looking at some very strong options as well. And that's, in fact, the reaction that is coming from Donald Trump. Listen in.
Have they crossed your red line yet to trigger a response?
It's starting to, it looks like, and there seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent. If you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
I'm joined by KP Fabian on the phone line. Thank you so much, sir, for connecting with us. How do you look at the situation unfolding in Iran? There's civil unrest, but also comments that are coming in from US President Donald Trump. Time and again, he's saying that US is looking at it very strongly, and they also have some very strong options now, prompting Iran to say that there's some sort of foreign interference as far as the unrest is concerned.
Good morning. The situation is very, very serious and very, very bad. And what has happened is that because there were protests, mainly because of inflation, because the shops were open but nobody was buying, the regime resorted to violence to suppress those protests, and then naturally, unfortunately, the protesters, some of them, also started burning buildings and all that. So the situation is very, very serious. The Ayatollah's, authority is eroding. At the same time, I do not think it is going to crumble tomorrow or day after. And as regards President Trump, he is putting pressure. I do not think he will take any military action, though. Let me put it this way. Taking military action will be foolish, but then leaders do foolish things.
Absolutely, you're right. It remains to be seen whether or not he will take any military action. But now he has been issuing threats to Iran. Thanks so much for connecting with us, KP Fabian, former diplomat. Now, this is not the first time that Donald Trump has issued a direct warning to Iran's leadership. Earlier as well, US President Donald Trump had issued a warning saying that do not open fire on the protesters or America will respond. In fact, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has publicly said that the United States support the brave people of Iran. Now, as the world watches the crackdown and the blackout there is another layer here. US media is reporting that Donald Trump's administration has been calibrating the response to avoid lighting a fuse in region already on the edge, even as it keeps the pressure on Iran. And now we can see that there is unrest in the country. We have another breaking update coming in as far as Iran is concerned. We have a reaction from Iran's supreme leader. But before that, have a look at this reaction coming in.
So Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. We're watching the situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts. And that doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts. So they've done a bad job. They've treated their people very badly, and now they're being paid back. So let's see what happens. We're watching it. We're watching it very closely.
Well, even as US President Donald Trump has said that the United States is watching this very closely, a reaction has come in from Iran's supreme leader. He has attacked Donald Trump. He has said, and I quote, that father figure who sits there with arrogance and pride, passing judgment on the entire world. He should know that usually the oppressor of the world, such as Nimrod and Reza Khan and Mohammad Reza and likes of them, when they are at the peak of their pride, they were overthrown. This too will be overthrown, and that's a big statement that is coming from Iran's supreme leader. On this, let me go across to consulting editor Srinjoy Chaudhary. Srinjoy, now a reaction that is coming from Iran's supreme leader. He said that this one too will be overthrown, referring to Donald Trump, because in the last few days, Iran has maintained that there is some sort of foreign interference as far as civil unrest in the country is concerned.
Well, at this point, the important thing is that the unrest has to end. And the world is watching Iran because Iran is a very pivotal country and very important for the security and stability of that region. Now, if so many thousand people are on the streets, if there are so many dead, so many arrested, let's hope this entire thing settles down peacefully. Sure, there have been threats. President Trump has threatened Iran. The Iranian leadership has threatened President Trump. All of that is entirely understandable, considering the acrimony and the hatred between the leaderships. First of all, Iran in the past has referred to America as Great Satan and Israel as Little Satan. So this is well known. But the important thing, the worrying thing, is the unrest in the cities, the unrest in the countries. And let's hope that ends, and let's hope that peace returns to Iran.
Absolutely.
Because you heard President Trump make it very clear, saying we will not have boots on the ground, but we will hit them hard. Now, what he will do, we don't know. America has a lot of military resources in the area. The president himself is not a figure who is entirely predictable. So this has potential of serious trouble ahead. Let's hope things don't get that far, and let's hope that this unrest ends. But yet it has to be said that at this point things seem to be getting worse and worse. So we'll have to wait and see how things pan out, because America hitting Iran hard does not solve the problem. So we have to see what happens in the future, and the future doesn't appear to be very bright right now.
Absolutely. Stay on with us, Srinjoy. I'm joined by Pratikrit Pen. Thanks so much for connecting with Times Now. How do you look at the situation there in Iran? Because on one hand, Donald Trump is saying that US is watching the developments very closely. But now a reaction that is coming from Iran's supreme leader. And he has said that Donald Trump is full of pride. And just like the other leaders, this one too will be overthrown. Your reaction to this?
Well, the situation inside Iran is something that the Iranian regime must worry about, because any kind of protest, any kind of nationwide mass protest should be dealt with delicate hands instead of shooting 500 plus people and detaining 10,000 plus, protesters. That never helps. So if there are situations getting worse within Iran, I think the regime should introspect as to whether they could have handled it in a better manner rather than presuming that every protester is a foreign agent. So far as the Americans are concerned, well, the Americans have a habit of fishing in troubled water. If they think that intervening inside Iran right now, and which I'm sure they will do sooner or later, will solve the problems, that is not going to happen that way. See, most Iranians today may be against the regime of Iran, but that doesn't make them pro-America. That doesn't make them mean that if the Americans intervene, the situation inside Iran is going to be better. We have the example of Iraq in front of us. What happened once Saddam Hussein was thrown out. It created a huge void and a vacuum out of which an ISIS kind of a beast was born, and a civil war completely ravaged not just Iraq but also the whole of Middle East and North Africa because of the ISIS violence. So if this situation is not handled properly, and if the Americans think that they will bring their narrative of liberty, freedom, and democracy and all will be sorted out, it doesn't happen so easily. It has been seen what happened in Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Iraq, and many other places. So I think it is a cause for concern. The Iranians most probably will block the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran is no Venezuela. It's not going to be a walkover for the Americans. We are unfortunately looking at another major flare-up. Iran might also have a preemptive strikes targeted towards Israel or somebody else. But I think the situation as it stands today, it means that after the Ukrainian conflict and the Venezuelan issue, there's another major problem going to come up. So if you look at from the time of COVID itself, the world has not seen any kind of stability, and that is not good for global peace. Back to you.
Absolutely, and the situation is quite concerning. The death toll has mounted to 500. There's a total communication blockade, and the death toll is only rising. Thanks so much, Pratikrit, for getting us that perspective, and thanks so much, Srinjoy, for getting us those details as far as the civil unrest in Iran is concerned. With this, a short break.